Oh, there she is. Hi.
Hello. I'm trying to get my camera working and I'm not that familiar with how to do this one. Normally just like there we go, turn on. Okay.
I just invited it, so maybe that's
There we go. Hello, how are you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Trying to stay warm. Where are you located?
I'm in Arizona, so
Oh, so you're nice and warm.
yeah, it's like 70, 80s for our winter. So
Yeah, it's the perfect time to be in Arizona right now.
it really is. We get all the snowbirds because we're nice and toasty.
I have a few friends that live out that way in like Phoenix and Goodyear and stuff like that. So I'm originally from California, and so like they moved to Arizona, and they're having great weather while we're covered in snow over here constantly.
I have friends that they're like, yeah, we got a weather delay. And I'm like, oh, it's like 80 here.
Yeah. My kids have been out of school like all week, and I'm like, oh God, can't wait to get them back to school because it just keeps snowing out here constantly. It's ridiculous.
Yet I'm shivering when it's like 52 degrees.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
oh my God, I need a sweater.
But the West Coast is different than the East Coast because even when I go back and I visit family and it's like 62 or like 58, I'm cold. I'm cold like I am out here when it's like in the 40s or 30s. So it's just a different kind of cold, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And we get a different kind of hot too.
yes. Oh, yes.
Well, while we wait for everybody to come on in, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Evelyn Montgomery, and I'm a romance author. I write a little bit of everything in romance. So I've written new adult to romantic suspense to college to dark romance to fantasy, kind of a little bit of everything in between, rom-coms and all the things. So,
I originally found you through your retelling of Peter Pan.
yes. Yes.
Oh. I was on the fence because there's a lot of retellings and they're
Yes.
very hit or miss for me because I'm like, okay, like this is either like 99% smut or like the plot isn't hitting with me. But I was like, the first 50 pages of your book, I'm like, I'm not gonna go to sleep tonight.
I love it. Was that Losing Neverland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was obsessed. And then when I got to Saving Tink, I was like, there's no way that she's gonna redeem it. And I was on the fence. I was like, I don't even know if I want to read it because I don't like her.
Everyone says that. You're not
And
the
I'm
only
like,
one.
yeah, and I kept going back and forth. I was like, look, it's part of the series. I'm probably gonna end up liking it, but it's just like I was battling with myself. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna dive in. I'm just gonna dive in. And at the end, I'm just like, why do I feel bad for her? Like, why do I like her now?
Why is she okay now? Why I love that. Did you listen to the audios too or just read the book?
I did.
You did. So what'd you
Yes.
think of the audios?
The audios made it even better,
Mhm.
in my opinion, because I always read before I listen because I
Yeah.
like to gauge what I would think they sound like,
Yeah.
and then I listen to it to see if it like matches up in my head.
Yeah.
So when I read them, I was like, okay, this is kind of how I'm picturing it, and Joe and Maxine just like knocked it out of the park.
Oh yeah. I couldn't have asked for better narrators and what they did. I just handed them the books. I said, do what you do. Because it's just going to be amazing. It's like, do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Do it. And they did. And of course it was a jaw-dropping performance, just phenomenal. So they did a great job.
I was really impressed how you can distinguish each side character as well
Yes.
in the audiobook.
Even Maxine, I think she upped her game. Like just all the characters that she played and the differences, like even when she was like Morgan Le Fay, I think, and just a couple of the others, she blew me away when it hit my earphones.
Agreed. I was like, I can't even put this down if I wanted to. It's grabbing me by the throat. And I think I stayed up until like 5 in the morning.
Oh, I love it.
because I'm like, I'm listening to it and I'm like doing stuff around the house and like, everybody, I put the kids to bed and then my husband was going to bed and I was like, okay, I'll be in there in a minute. And I'm just like doing stuff. And then I look up, I was like, oh, it's a little bit light outside.
Right? You're like, the sun is coming up.
And I was like, well, that's when you know it's a really good book.
Oh, I love that. That's the best compliment ever. So thank you. And
I
it's a nod to the narrators as well. Like they kept you engrossed in the story. They're just amazing at what they do.
agreed. But it all came from your words. I loved what you did with Hook.
Oh, what part? Which one? Like, what did he do?
Like the mind games, how he
Oh.
was basically like Jekyll and Hyde, and I was just like, that's so neat because usually they make him like two different people.
Yeah. Yeah, so that Peter and Hook were the same. Yeah, it's definitely unconventional to kind of do something like that. I've never seen anyone do it before, but it worked and people liked it. And I was a little bit worried at first. I was like, are people even going to like this? Because you're used to, having Peter and having Hook. To have them as the one was definitely different, but people seem to really like it. So I'm happy.
Oh, I thought that was such a like new way to approach it because I've always read, and they're always two different people. And, I've read it where Hook's the bad guy or Hook's the actual good guy and then Peter's the bad guy. But to have them both in the same mind battling each other was such a refreshing take on the retelling. And I'm like, I feel like that's so hard to do with a retelling.
Yeah. Yeah. So is Peter Pan one of your favorites? You like Peter Pan?
It's hit or miss. Hold on, baby. It's hit or miss for me. I usually go for Peter Pan because I haven't liked any other retelling, and that's usually the one I have most fun reading or listening to. But I will say yours is probably my favorite out
Oh,
of the
thank
ones that
you.
I've read.
Thank you. I love that.
I loved how you went all the way back to when they were kids, and then you just built on that experience, and it just circles back. And I was like, how does her mind work?
It's very twisted up in here.
What was your inspiration for making them two in one head?
I don't, well, I read the original, and in it, there was quotes and different passages from Jay and Barry that kind of pulled out that hinted that it could be kind of this way. And so in my mind, I always I don't know why, I just kind of thought about it like they're the same person. He's his dark part of his personality. And I just decided to go with it and see if it would work. And it ended up working. And I don't know, it just flew out that way. So
That I just like yeah, like when you did that, I was like, how did she get this? Like, how did you work that in your mind and then be able to narrate it in a book and have it come out so well? Like, I had no idea that that was going to be the twist. And the whole time I'm waiting for like, it to be like this next person coming in book two and when you drop that twist, I was like, she did not just do that.
I think in my head, I just thought, well, he loses Wendy, right? And who's the dark element in Neverland? It's Hook. So if you lose someone, you go into a state of grieving and loss and darkness. And so he would become the darkness. And so I guess he's going to become Hook. I don't know. I guess maybe that's the way my brain was like, hey, that's a great concept. Now let's see if we can work it. And I think it ended up well. And then Joe Arden just knocked it out of the park because he does Unhinged so well. So for anyone to pick up that book and just take that character and go with it, I couldn't have asked for anyone better.
Yeah, I love that. And I loved how you were able to make me forgive and like Tink by her.
Yeah.
How
I love
did
the
you
story.
come up with doing that with her, making her memories gone?
Well, I knew that I don't really know, to be honest. I think that I just knew that she had a past and that we had to somehow get past her past. Um, and so in order for that, sometimes I think when we have very traumatic experience happen to us, they shape us and they form us into a form, into someone that we're not really. And they bring out a darker side of us as well, kind of in her. So that had to have happened to her, but she had to have possibly forgotten it. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't know. I'm not really a planner when it comes to writing. I'm one of those who I just sit down and I just write, and whatever comes out, comes out. So
That's impressive.
it creates the worlds that it creates, and sometimes they do some crazy things, and sometimes chapters don't come out the way that I thought that they were going to come out. But then I just roll with it, and I'm like, hey, this is the book, this is the way that it goes. And I think I found the story of Saving Tink while I was writing it. I didn't really know where I was going or what was happening, and that's why it's kind of broken into 3 different sections, because I was like, okay, when I got to the point where they're all sitting down, I was like, she has a past that she doesn't remember, and so let's jump to the past. And then it created a whole nother book where I actually debated even making that a prequel, like taking that out and making that a prequel to then the other half and just having it connect. Mm-hmm. But I decided to leave it in the middle and just roll with it. So
I think her book was probably my favorite just because of how much emotion you pulled out of me in that story. Because I went in it and, read the other books and you're just like, I'm not a real big fan of her. And you completely not only changed my mind, but you made me see her in a whole different light.
Oh, I love that.
I love how you put in real trauma and real feelings in a fairy tale. Like Hook and Pan, their mind, what they went through. And then you go into Tink's story and the whole reason that, she has, I don't want to spoil it for anybody in the chat, but she has that issue, and you uncover that whole situation, and that I cried when you revealed what happened to her and the choices made because of that. I just sat there and I was like, oh my God, just tears. I'm just like, how could I possibly have ever hated her?
I don't cry often in books at all. It takes a lot to pull emotion out of me. But when I got the audio for it and I was listening to it back, I started crying even at my own book. So, it's just, it is traumatic. She has a traumatic past, but she has to have that in order to have her redemption, right?
Exactly.
So.
Because I've read other ones where, they've made her the bad guy, but they never redeemed her, and they never took it to that extent where you took it. And reading it made me emotional, but listening to it, I was sobbing.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to hear it in my head, in my voice, but to listen to it and narration and feel that like gut-wrenching emotion delivered, I was a sobbing mess.
Yeah. I told Maxine this week, like we had a sign this weekend, and I was talking to Maxine and was speaking to Penny Crane about it. We were all there doing a signing, and Penny hasn't listened to it yet. And I told her, I was like, I honestly think it's the best audiobook I've ever listened to. And it's not, I understand I wrote it, but it's because their narration was just top tier, amazing, bringing it to life. So
you could definitely feel their emotions when they delivered, and they're heavy, stuff triggers in there. There's heavy trauma in there. So them being able to deliver it with such emotion just makes the whole experience different. So I was in love with the book. I was in love with the audiobook. And I was like, I need to talk to her in my life.
Anytime you want to talk to me, we can talk.
I know you do other genres. What made you jump from, like the fantasy to sports?
So I started off in contemporary romance. I started off writing small town. So all these books that Blue Nose is producing now are actually about 7 years old. And so that's where I started, was with this series and writing all this. And in this series, you kind of see my natural progression to dark romance. This series ends with definitely some more romantic suspense type stuff. And from there, I went off and I wrote Mafia, and I wrote psychological thrillers and different things like that. And then, I don't know, I was just sort of like, I was reading other Peter Pan retellings, and they were good, and I was reading them with friends, but I was like, it's not hitting a mark with me. And one of my friends was like, well, why don't you try and write your own? I was like, I can't do that. I don't write fantasy. Like, I write dark contemporary romance. Like, how am I supposed to write fantasy? And so she kind of dared me to do it. I was like, all right, I'll try to write fantasy. And that's how it happened. That's how I jumped over into fantasy, and then I started reading more of it and just dove into it. To where actually my next release that's coming out is a paranormal fantasy. And so that's going to start a whole nother world and a whole nother series. And it comes out in like a month. So it's like, so I'm kind of just been in my fantasy element recently, I guess.
I love that it was a dare. I'm so glad you took this dare because I'm so in love with your take. And I usually don't do sports romances either, but I'm like, you know what? I loved how she did this retelling. I'm going to dive into the sports romance and fell in love again. So, like,
did you listen to Catch?
I did.
It's short. It. It's very short and sweet. I wrote it, and I wrote it in like 3 weeks, and I released it on Valentine's Day. And because I released it on Valentine's Day, I was like, I just want to create this very swoony, like, it's all the perfect lines kind of guy, you know, to come out on Valentine's Day for everybody. And that was Hunter, and people love him. And I guess I'm not surprised because he says all the right lines, but yeah, he's fun. And Joe did a great job voicing Hunter as well.
I had a blast listening to that. I was like, I'm pretty sure she can write a recipe book, and I would be ecstatic to read and listen to it.
I love that.
What made you go into paranormal? Do you have inspiration for that?
After I wrote Losing Neverland, we were coming up on Halloween, and I was like, man, I really always have wanted to write a vampire book. Like, that would be really cool to write vampires. And being a kid from the 90s, I was like, well, the two elements that I know of vampires is either Interview with the Vampire and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so I actually wrote a novella to go ahead. And so it's published right now. The original book is published, and it's a novella. You can get it in Kindle Unlimited. It's called Lifeline. And when I released it, I was just like, oh, whatever. Just have this out by, Halloween. And people loved it. Everyone was like, oh my God, you have to make this full length. You have to make this a series. And I was like, what? No. So I listened to the readers and I developed it. And now it's probably my longest book I've ever written. And it's going to re-release in its longer format in like a month.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
So, yeah, anybody wants to get on the ARC team, I'm taking readers and everything right now. So if you want to, come and read the next version of Lifeline. And if you want to read the original, it's very spicy. It's full of triggers. It's like, it's in Kindle Unlimited, and you can get the original version before you read the extended version.
Are you going to remove the old version when you put out the new one?
No. I'm going to keep it up, just like Losing Neverland and Lost Boy and Saving Tink. I'm like, yeah, this is the original, so people can get both. I'm going to have to, I wasn't going to re-release the original, and I decided, throw it up there, let people read it. So now I obviously can't call it Lifeline. So this next one will be called Cursed Lifeline, but it's the extended version of the novella. So
I'm so excited. I know book club's like, we will read it.
Everybody, come read it. And hopefully it'll go to audio.
Ooh, yay.
Hopefully. There's no plans yet for it, but I would love to get it produced in audio. And I've had several people who have kind of been alpha reading it who say that it would be great for like a multicast, because there is lots of characters in it that'll eventually spawn off and have their own. But if it doesn't do multicast, like just having another great narrator who can voice many different characters would work too. So
right. One of our members has already found it. She's downloading it now.
Love it.
And how did you get started writing? I know you said that the sports series was like 7 years old.
Oh yeah. So I went to school for journalism. Okay. And I became a journalist, and from there I went to marketing and like philanthropy and different other things. But I've always wanted to be a writer as far back as when I was a little kid. I would go ahead and scribble things together and staple them together and pretend they were books and like sit down with my family and like read them a story before I could ever really write. And so through that, then it went to kind of like I started writing poetry and song lyrics and different things like that. And I always had a journal with me when I was a teenager and would just journal in different things. And I dabbled with writing little stories, but that was like maybe in like junior high and different things like that. And so when I got older, I was like, well, and I was about to graduate from college. I was like, man, I've always really wanted to try my hand at writing a book. Like, could I actually do this? And so I sat down and I tried, and that was about 7, 8 years ago, and it's just sort of gone since then. So
That's amazing. I'm always curious how people get started. A lot of people say they've had it for forever, or it's just like, oh, COVID happened, and I was like, why not?
yeah, no, me, this has just always been a dream. It's something that no matter what, I'll probably always do because I always have been doing it even since I was like a little girl. So it's like I'll always be writing in some way, shape, or form. So
Is
yeah.
there any other genres that you are gonna dabble in?
I don't know. I've kind of dabbled in them all, to be honest. Like there may be like some that I haven't written things like Why Choose or different things like that. But as far as like romantic suspense or sports or college or fantasy or paranormal, like I've done pretty much the whole circle.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. I always tell people it's really hard to market me as an author sometimes because when you go to book signings, you see people, it's like, oh, they write shifters. Oh, they only write mafia, or you know what I mean? And to me, I'm like, I just write kind of whatever I want to. Like,
I'm a jack of all trades.
yeah, I'm just like, I was primarily writing dark romance, and I took about like a year almost off, and I came back and I hit all of my readers with a rom-com. And I'm pretty sure they did like a, what the frick is this? Like, and it was like, man, it was what I was feeling at the time, and it worked, and they all loved it. They stuck around, even though they were dark romance readers, and it did well, but so I don't know. Like I keep telling everyone, I'm like, what will I write when I'm done with this book in like the next couple of weeks? I'm like, I really don't know.
Oh, yeah, voting for Why Choose.
Like, yeah, that's the one thing I haven't done that yet. I haven't dabbled in that arena and different things like that. But as far as like, I always tell people, no matter what you like to read, I probably have a book in that genre because, yeah, like I said, sports, romantic suspense, mafia, you know what I mean? Like paranormal, fantasy, college, like there's rom-com. There's something out there. I've probably written it. So
I love that. Would you consider doing any more retellings?
oh yeah, no, I have plans for him. Like I started writing a Robin Hood retelling. So I dabbled in that a little bit. I don't know when or if I'll ever finish it, but I did write like a chapter or two as like a start. The one I would love to do if I could get a good idea for it would be Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty has always been one of my favorites. And then, Alice in Wonderland. That would be a good one to kind of twist around. So if I did, it'd probably be one of those three.
Okay. I'm curious because I was like, I really like how you did this one. So I'm like, can you do the other ones too?
Yeah, I had lots of people say that when I first released it. They were like, I want to vote for you to write all the retellings
Yeah.
and twist them in some way. And I think that's it. Like, I haven't gotten the twist yet. Once I get the twist, like, my imagination is off. Like, when I got the twist that Peter was hooked, I was like, okay, we're right here. Let's go. And I just, for the different retellings, like, I feel like I want that twist. I want that, and I don't have it yet. But once I have it, I'll do it. I'll dabble.
So we need to start spitfiring twists.
Right. Ideas. Just like be like, oh, how about this? How about that? I'll be like, one will stick one day, and I'll be like, all right, and I'll go off and write it.
I know, because I really do enjoy those. So I was like, maybe we convince her on Thursday to like go ride like a Little Mermaid one or something.
Yeah, they're fun because I mean, like, I think we all enjoy them because we grew up with them as kids. So it's like when becoming a woman and a mom and an adult, it's just like you sit there with your kids, and how many times can you watch Cinderella for the 500th time when you watched it for 500 times when you were a kid? So then to come back and have like an adult version, yeah, I think they're an easy addiction for a lot of us women.
Especially as Disney kids. Why choose Sleeping Beauty? Oh, there we go.
Hey, yeah. Well, you know which one would be a good Why Choose? And I always thought about this. I'm sure someone has it somewhere, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure someone's done that. If they haven't, they need to jump on that because that's just gold. So,
have you ever considered doing like a monster romance?
No, but primarily because I don't read them.
Okay.
So I'm like one of those. I would need to read it. I'm not saying I would never do it. I'm not saying that, especially like as I've gotten more into paranormal and fantasy, you have shifters and different things like that to where if my imagination went there one day, maybe it would develop in the storyline. Um, but I don't have any plans to. But who knows? My imagination's a wild place, so it could just all of a sudden pop into something somewhere someday.
I want to take a vacation in your mind for a little bit. I love it. Are you doing any signings that are coming up?
I am. I have I don't have the list with me. I think close to 7. I'm doing a signing in 2 weeks in Nashville. I'm doing, and then what? I think I have like one in Ohio. I've got one in Georgia. I've got another one in Nashville. And then another one somewhere else, I think. And then I'm on the list of a couple others for this year. So as they pop up and if they've got tables open and available, I'll grab them and be able to do them. And then I'm hoping to plan a couple more like I did last weekend where they're like little ones at bookshops or whatever with fellow author friends whenever we can. So.
Oh, I love that. I know because we're going to one in Vegas in October, so I'm like, are you going to be there?
Oh, is it Wild and Windy?
Yes.
Yes. I applied for it. I did apply for it. Now, I have not gotten accepted, but this is what I tell everyone. I did not know this until recently. The way that it helps authors go to events is if you readers tell them you want us there. So we apply, but the more people that they have being like, oh, I really want to see this person, or oh, I really want to see that person, then I guess it puts a bug in their ear that, hey, we might want to have this person here. But I did apply to Wild and Windy in Vegas, and I